Sorry about that. My intro didn't play, so that kind of came out weird. Um, I'm just going to start off by saying, welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Um, so tonight I'm bringing back a guest that everybody might remember from season one. His name is Nathan Ciszek. He is a MyLab survivor and a guy that has a lot of interesting information about some things that go on, um, basically behind the scenes and the way things are manipulated in our lives, and even in a romantic sense. And tonight we're going to get into some pretty cool, interesting topics. And I'm just so happy to have him back because he's just really interesting to talk to. And so I will just throw him up on stage here. Boom. Welcome back, Nathan. Thank you for coming on again.
Thank you for having me, Don. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite. And thanks for going. So you want to talk about love bites, right?
Well, let's start with what you've been up to, because you guys just did a show, you and Matt Mornian on Typical Skeptic too, right? Like, we don't have to jump right into it. We can let a few people get in the audience. And
yeah, I did the show with him. Was it Thursday, I think, or was it Wednesday? I think it was Thursday. And yeah, it went really well. It was the first time I did one with just Matt and Rob. Just the three of us. So interesting. I like Matt. He's got a lot of good things to say. And one of the things I'm really impressed with him when he does his work with people is he's focused on healing the person or actually getting them to focus on healing themselves, because you really can't make somebody heal. You can take implants out and you can fix whatever they're doing to you temporarily, but you have to be able to heal yourself to the point where it's harder for them, to do this to you, because the more damaged you are, the more vulnerable you are to these astral parasites, astral AI implants, and things like that. The things that people say don't exist, but when you start bringing up evil spirits, demonic possession, and temptations by the devil, most of the theological people are right on board with what you mean. It's just that they don't understand that a lot of that is extraterrestrial AI, as well as what they think it is. So it's a bit of a struggle to get through to those people, which you have to know how to talk to them, because you have them. If you think about it, theological people and people like us do have the most in common but we have a completely different way of looking at
I
it.
agree with that. And what I was gonna say is, like, that always baffles me when people are like, that's impossible, there can't be an attachment, there can't be an entity just beside me. But if you understand the basics of science, we also know that there are an infinitesimal number of spectrums and frequencies of light and sound and all of these things that we as biological humans cannot perceive. There's stuff going on all around us that is beyond our perception. So you can't honestly, unequivocally say that can't be, because there's literally an infinite amount of things that we can't perceive.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The skeptics would say, well, we've perceived much of that with microscopes and telescopes and things like that. But the problem is that they're in denial about some of the other stuff. And if you look at CIA.gov, you can find evidence of psychic abilities and declassified documents, remote viewing. The information is out there. There's just a lot of peer pressure, and a political and scientific agenda to suppress this information and just prevent the public from really talking about other than the infotainment, genre that you find on the History Channel, where everything just has music to it, it's quick cuts. It's made to entertain somebody who's progressively getting worse with ADD.
It really is. And it actually kind of reminds me of a conversation Spinja and I were having today. It's the pterodactyl dragon query. Like, if you tell somebody there was dragons, they think you're insane. But we have fossils of pterodactyls. Well, then how far out there is it that there were dragons? Right? I can't. Yeah.
The thing is that, when you talk about breathing fire, then it kind of gets to the point where it's like, well, how would that be possible? So they have an argument there, but it seems as if these dragons may not be physical in the first place. recently, and this is new. I mean, in the last few years, people have been reporting dragons, astral dragons type of entity, some type of benevolent reptilian entity. I don't know if they're two-legged or four-legged or what or both, but I don't know if they look like the Chinese dragons or something more like less profound looking or less ornate. But I don't know, but they're apparently there. So I haven't had any experiences with it, but I just hope that they're what they say they are.
Somebody you might want to talk to about that is Jamie Jacobson. She's actually going to be on my show in April, and
Yeah.
she's been on Rob's show a couple of times, and she actually experiences the ethereal dragons, and she's shown me some like actual footage. Like there's no wind flow in her room, but she'll have like a helium balloon, and something will push it around the room like to her. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole ghost with the flashing ball thing, right? You have to give them something to interact with that's physical so you can perceive what they're doing.
Right, or at least so the camera can pick up some kind of phenomenon. Yeah, I've talked to her about it. I spoke to her over a year ago, and I was pretty skeptical at that point in time because I'd come out of a lot of deceptions and things. I went through a virtual temple complex called the Joy of Satan, so that should tell you right there that there's no joy in Satan, but they packaged it in such a way that the mind control made it palatable. So yeah, there's all sorts of funny business going on the astral. So let's see. I don't know. Go ahead. I'll let you lead this discussion.
I was going to say,
to avoid the love bite stuff. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, to close that whole subject out, I absolutely love, like, I just did a collaboration last night with Rob and Stephen from BG Cast and Chris Matthew, and I love all the collaborations that are coming in the community. It's getting rid of the bullshit infighting, right? People are actually starting to listen to each other instead of just trying to talk over. It's still happening in some aspect. I get it, and it's gonna. Yeah. Right. But I love how much this community, especially in the one that you and I are involved in, seem to, starting to compare notes and, really get after it and working together.
I think it's out of necessity because I think a lot of people are getting it and they're realizing that, you can't get help outside this community. And for the people who are in different communities in the paranormal spectrum, they don't have the same. They're not like us because we are in a sense, and this is going to make people mad who are veterans and they get upset about stolen valor. But the reality is that they've used us in military programs. Technically, that makes us like veterans. We do have a strong connection with each other that's just more than just meeting each other online and being scattered all over the place, because there's a lot of things that are going on in these programs that involve parts of us that we're not even really fully aware of, versions of us. So we're actually all really one group of people just figuring this out. So we should be the ones that should have the most cohesiveness, the most sense of community. But because of the mind control, because of the interference, and because of the fact that everybody just, for one, in the paranormal community, a MyLab is like the last person you really want to mess with. Not only have to worry about the government, but you have to worry about them. Are they going to be stable? Are they going to be okay to talk to? We have a bad reputation of flying off the handle, sounding delusional, and oftentimes just being disrespectful to people. I mean, a lot of people have difficulty, alcohol, drugs, you name it. And it shows, and it just, well, you're pointing to yourself, and we all have problems. But if there's nothing to be ashamed of, obviously. I mean, but in the things that we talk about too, I mean, the sexual abuse, all of these things, they repel people. I remember when I asked Rob, I'm like, do you know anybody who can do hypnotic regression? I literally had no clue where to go. And he recommended a woman from MUFON who said that she worked with MyLabs. Well, I sent her an email and she responded back and gave me her cell phone number, right? So I had a problem. I couldn't use my cell phone to call Canada, and I had a cheap cell phone plan. So it took like 10 days to get this like $1.95 add-on so I could call Canada from my cell phone. And I wanted to do that and use that if we did hypnosis, so I wasn't using the landline. So 10 days later, she would not talk to me at all. She wouldn't respond. It just either she caught wind of what I was or somebody said something. She had a bad feeling. I don't know what happened, but it was a complete about face, and she would have nothing to do with me. And that was my first taste of the MUFON people. You know, some of them say they want to work with us, but, you know, unless you've been on the History Channel about the SSP, they probably don't want to touch you with somebody else's 10-foot pole. You know, so.
I agree with that. And a lot of what you were just saying totally resonates with my own story. And the only way I've really been as balanced as I've been able to be with it is I understand that that is just a stage of my consciousness. Like, there was a time where I scared the hell out of Spinja. Like, I went down the SSP rabbit hole and I was in it deep. Like, she thought I might have needed psychiatric help. And then something snapped in my head and I was just like, well, wait a minute. If I can experience that stage of my conscious existence, then there's got to be a lot more stages of my conscious existence through multiple realities that I could probably tap into or at least see. Right. And that was my recovery, was going from deep down into the SSP rabbit hole to realizing that if that's true, then there's a whole lot of other things in this universe that are too.
Oh, yeah. This universe is much bigger and much more spectacular and interesting than any Bible or other holy book or any movie could actually capture and present to you in any realistic way. There's just a lot going on here, and what we need to keep going the same path and keep improving the relationships in this community and actually get our shit together, because there's going to be a time when the world needs to hear our stories. Our collective testimony has to be heard. And if it looks like it does right now, we're in big trouble because we don't have those voices organized. We don't have everyone together on the same page. All it takes is one person to come in and stir something up, and then everyone falls apart. An election can shut down a podcast project that multiple people are working on, which just came out of the blue and is really sad to see. People have, from what I can see, there's a lot of animosity politically that people, it's like, why don't you just talk about things? I mean, also people get on each other's nerves and they say things that bother each other, but if they don't bring it up and discuss it, it builds up. And then you wind up kind of having what we had. And I'm still kind of just, there's not much I can say about, disclosure now, other than it was good while it lasted. I thought we were getting ready to iron some problems out, but then it just kind of went completely, it just imploded at that point. And I don't think there's any fixing it. I think it's just, we just got to kind of move on and do our own thing and then get back together and create something different. The movement's still going to go on. It's not going to stop. There's still going to be a conference. So, just means we all have to kind of more and really get it together and stop the ridiculous fighting.
I really do think, and just as you were explaining that whole situation, like, I am totally convinced that there is a real thing that is Project Oblivion. And I think this community is being infiltrated and bothered and manipulated. Like, I have had some people over the last year that I thought were dear lifelong companion, like comrades in this, and just all of a sudden, like, just, no, I don't like you anymore. And I'm like, okay, right? And that's just the way I have to be with it, right? Like,
is that person still in the community? Did they like back away from the community, or they just backed away from you, or maybe a few people I knew?
It's happened 3 times. The one person backed away from the community, and 2 of them are still involved. And I'm not going to finger point. They've done nothing wrong to the community. It was just like, we gelled and now we don't. And it was just like, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that happens a lot, and you know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons for it. Each person has their own set of reasons why it happened. But I do know that,
Yeah.
it's easy to unplug from this community and then suffer the consequences because everyone around you, it's like you're plugging into the community through a portal, and that's your cell phone or your computer, because everyone's so scattered about. But then you're surrounded by all of this and all these people and this whole world around you that keeps telling you that you're wrong, this doesn't exist, government's benevolent, they're criminals and crooks, and they just stage all these wars, but they would never target a person. They never abduct
No.
kids. They never do any of these things. And there's no aliens. It's just Jesus up there waiting to come back. As soon as he gets that phone call, he's going to be dropping down out of the sky to fix everything. It isn't realistic. But
I'm glad you hit on that. Actually,
Mhm.
you hit on something there. Have you seen the movie Frequency?
No, it sounds interesting, man.
It's about a father and son that end up talking over an old ham radio, but over like a span of time while there's Northern Lights going on. Anyways, I can't recall the main actor's name, like the main character's name or actual name, but he just came out, I think it was on X, and was calling out that the CIA is the biggest pedophile ring in history. And he has legitimate proof.
Oh, it is for sure. The FBI's involved in their own version of it, the same thing. We know that with Epstein and all these others. So the government is benevolent after all. But when it comes to this kind of thing, though, this is next level corruption. They don't want to accept the fact. Now you can tell the Christians and the Muslims and everything that it's Satan above this whole thing, making everybody bad and influencing them. But when you tell them that Satan is technically just a character in this menage a trois of like theological characters, and it's a control system, and it's a social engineering program, and all the religions are, and all of them are designed or co-opted in some way. I believe there is a historical Jesus. I don't agree with the whole story. It's been remote viewed. You could argue about that, this or that, but ultimately, I don't see the big success of Christianity. I see, some of the tenets, or some of the main rules in it being put into society, and these are common sense things, love one another and stuff like that. But in general, I see the Christian religion being weaponized against the public, and it always has. It protects pedophiles and does. And I guess I'm not even supposed to say that. Sorry, YouTube. Didn't mean to mention that protected class of people. Satan forbid not, one of them get a hair harmed on their head. But I mean, we just we have a sick culture and it's brainwashed, and people are fighting. We should be on the same page and comparing ideas. As far as people who are really theologically minded, they have the ability to accept some of them what sounds impossible. They just have to strip away some of the Bible talk to understand it. And I think we need to make that bridge too. We got to make a lot of bridge in this community. I'd really just like to see us all kind of get on the same page, drop the politics, just go with facts, evidence, and support one another and try to get to the bottom of this, and then, help each other, and then ultimately become a political movement where we do have a voice instead of what we've got now, because there's nothing. It's just a bunch of scattered voices. I'm struggling to get people on board, and I really got to put more out. I got to be more public about this, but it's hard just to get people together. And like what I recommend, and I say it all the time: form groups, get with people that you really appreciate, that you really like, that you can trust or feel you can trust. Get to know them and use each other as a support group. And then once we establish that, let's try to do some things that are more offensive, such as offensive psychic warfare, remote viewing of handlers. Let's collect intelligence data on them. Let's do what they're doing to us. Let's give it back to them. Let's push back as hard as they push, and try to push back even harder. And they've got the tech, but we've got a lot of people. In fact, we've got numbers if we actually coordinated with each other and stopped the distrust. stop the infighting, and it's so ridiculous. I mean, why are we fighting with each other when the
Yeah.
world's against us already?
Yeah. No, exactly. It's literally time to stand up and, flip the table, so to speak, because it's the only way it's ever going to change if we stop fighting with each other. You're exactly right.
And something else I noticed too. I noticed that the conferences do a lot of good, especially the one that was there last year, the Full Disclosure Now conference. They get people together, right? I didn't go to that one as other circumstances took place. I should be at this next one. But what I've seen just as an observer is, as I've seen, there's kind of a high that kind of lasts for a little while, and everybody's on the same page. Everybody's feeling better, like they met each other, made some friends. It felt good to be there. And everybody starts talking about what we're going to do with each other. And a lot of the stuff that I brought up that we should be doing has been talked about in podcasts after that conference. But then as time goes by and all of the things in the world start to pull at you, and people get, oh God, I got to make the bills again. So it's right back to the grind, and then you get, you throw some psychological warfare, some targeting, some relationship issues, who knows, just societal stressors. And all of that wears away, and we're right back to where we were if the conference never happened. So there's there's not a lasting benefit that I'd like to see coming out of it. I'd like to figure out a way around that. I just got to keep at it. I mean, people just have to keep. If you want to make change in this community, you just got to keep repeating yourself. I mean, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
We should ride the wave to the next conference. It shouldn't fade away. We should be working on other things in the meantime. We should get right on it right after the conference. If it takes a conference to get people temporarily motivated, why procrastinate? Let's just get on it and start something. Even if it was just a couple of the people that are considered to be like the talking heads of the community were doing something and talking about it and discussing what was going on, because Olivia James is doing this kind of work, but she doesn't, It's her and me, Johnson, are doing a lot of it, but there's not a lot of other people working in there, to try to change things from the inside out. And that's the biggest problem I see. And of course, when you start talking about this, you start getting attacked. I got hit with directed energy like a week ago. I'm still not feeling right. But I'm not going to let that stop me. I mean, 2 days laying around feeling like I'm sick from radiation, and then a week of feeling run down and achy all over and stiff. That's what I've been going through. But I mean, they can't hit all of us. And then if they can, then we can all support one another. The problem is I get hit with that, and nobody takes it seriously, which is why we need people like us to talk to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Like it's absolutely true. Like they get us so busy that we stop trying to create our own reality that we want. Right? Like exactly what you said. They just hammering the social stressors, and if it's not your bills, it's your house, it's your wife, it's your kids, it's your job, it's your something.
Yeah.
And can you focus on what you wanted to do to change the world today? No.
And here's the problem. While that's happening, the handlers they haven't given up. They're working full time to get you. So they're on you they're on you just as much as before, if not more. After a conference or leading up to one, they've already started. I mean, at the end of the year, and I'll just give you a little rundown. We'll get into the Love Bite stuff. It's just that, I came up with the idea for the podcast. It wasn't even, I can't even take the credit for it, man. It was just that the energy and everything else was just saying, this has to be done. People need to talk to one another, and we need to try something. So went ahead and tried it. First 4 weeks, I thought we did pretty good without any structure. We're just talking over one another, and it worked. There was no need to jump in, and we started bringing other people in, and then there was a little bit of conflict going on. But then I realized after the first month, became psychic warfare. I was kind of surprised that we weren't getting like hammered right away. But after the first month, that was when the hammer came down, and you could literally feel it. I mean, you could watch it. I mean, I was sitting there because I had some psychic advancements over that period of time, It was out of necessity to save myself because they were hitting me, and I had to be able to block it. I couldn't sit there and do that and actually keep it together if I'm getting hit too and everybody else is. And what's the point? So, yeah. And after that happened, I realized this just how much manipulation energetically was going on, that even people like Matthew, I mean, he knew he was getting hit, but I don't know if he felt the scope of it, because because when you're getting hit, it's difficult to discern what's happening with other people. But if you're just observing it and shielding yourself, it's easier to see it. And I sat and I watched. It was like I just watched the whole podcast start to unravel. It was like, and it wasn't, the people were getting on each other a little bit. They were, people were getting on each other's nerves in the podcast, but there was other things going on that were actually making that turn into what it did. So, and then and it just went on like that. It was those last couple of weeks, and then they won temporarily, but I'm not going to stop. That needs to be done. And like I said, yesterday on Rob's show, I said, because Matthew recommended that I start it up again and start doing it again. I'm like, absolutely. But I'd like to do it in a different way, like not, where it's every show. It would be like, periodically, it would be a build up to it, especially around a topic that needs to be discussed. I think that would be the best way to do it. Get people wanting to be part of it, because it took too long to get people to want to do it. It was like I was begging people to come, and it would take me 3 or 4 days just to get a handful of people, and half of the people wouldn't show up. So I'd have like 8 or 9 people, and only 3 or 4 would show up. Then it just got lower and lower. It was harder and harder to get people. Yeah. And it was a lot had to do with the things that were going on, people talking over each other, and not enough structure. But before I got a chance to really get all that put in there, it just kind of went to hell. But yeah, it needs to be done. And also the other idea I had was to do it on other podcasts. Like, we don't have to do it at the same channel all the time. We could do it in different places. Like, you get a couple podcasters who say, hey, every so often we're going to do like a group chat and do something for the community and have everybody talk to each other. And, it's going to take more than one podcaster, in my opinion, to do this appropriately, because if you try to do it all yourself, you burn yourself out. I was the one that had to get everybody together. Arkeem was just kind of showing up to do it, but I was getting everybody together, and that was exhausting. So, it would take all the time he took with the other podcast. I was on I was on Facebook constantly trying to get a hold of people. And you run out of people to talk to. But yeah, it will happen again. So let's get to this love bite stuff, man. You wanted to talk about the different types of love bites.
Yeah, I would love just kind of a 101 and then the different types, because like it was a term that I was completely unfamiliar with until I came into this community. So, and I still don't know a whole hell of a lot about it, to be honest.
Yeah, the best person to ask could be Evie Lorgan. She's an expert on this field. She wrote the book, The Alien Love Bite. And anyway, I can talk to you roughly about what I've been through, and I can kind of explain this. The love bite aspect, if you look at this the way it is, this is a prison. Okay, look at the earth as a prison. Some people apparently can come and go. It's unverified, but they can get in. You can get in and out of here if you know how to do it. But there's people here, as long as you're consenting to the brainwashing and you're not questioning things, and you're going into the light, and you're just going with the program, you're stuck here. You're not getting out. And unless somebody were to come in and try to get you out. So, but what's happening is we have an influx of, I'm going to call them star seeds, for lack of a better word. It's the most commonly accepted term for an import, basically. These are people coming in here to do something. Now, some of these are prisoners, and we're not going to talk about them, but I'm going to talk about the people that are coming in here to end the prison, to change things on the ground, basically walking in the footsteps of Jesus here, because that was one of the attempts. And that upsets people, because they're like, no, that's the only attempt. Well, if that's the only attempt, then God's lazy. So I don't want to hear that. But anyway, you've got all these people coming here to make changes. So these people are going to have previous relationships. Sometimes, so that anytime there's a connection between two people, and they can bring them together and turn it into a love bite, they'll turn it into a destructive relationship if they can. So in other words, if I give you one example of I'm going to call this the New Age love bite. Okay. And it could be any religion, but it seems to be the New Age is the easiest one to understand. So you're a star seed. You wake up to that reality. You're not hijacked. You're not a my lab. You've got some psychic abilities. You may have some spirit guides, positive, negative, whatever. It's a mixed bag there. But, at some point, the system knows who you are. They know they know why you're here. They've mind wiped you. They've cataloged you. They've put you in this body. Because when you come in here, from what everybody says, including what I could say myself, from the vague recollection I have, is that you come in here and the system intercepts you, it mind wipes you, and it puts you in a body. So in order to get into the prison, to change the prison or to bring it down, you've got to maybe become a prisoner voluntarily. So you're consenting. So it's a prison based in consent. So you're consenting to your entrance to the prison. Okay, so that gives them permission under apparently a universal law that they can do this to you. So they mind wipe you, they put you in a body. Now later you start to wake up to your mission, and they find someone who you had a relationship with that's in your vicinity. And ultimately with the internet, it could be anywhere. You don't have to live next to someone or be in the same town. Normally this just happens online. So you have virtual temple complexes, which is basically a whole separate thing, but it's taking a pyramid, making it virtual, building a crowd around and get everybody to believe in whatever the pyramid is, whatever theme, religion the pyramid is. That's your virtual temple complex. There's lots of people doing that right now. Some know it and most don't. They don't know what they're doing. But anyway, you have the type of New Age love bite. So without getting too off track here, best way to explain this is that, okay, so they know that you have a relationship with somebody in your past. They'll find someone that's essentially a narcissist, for example. It's one of the most popular types to use for this. And they'll pair somebody up that's an agent of change with this narcissist. And the narcissist could be, you don't even have to, now there's more ways to do this. I've seen two types of ways to do this. You can get somebody that you have a previous relationship with in a past life, and then they bring those emotions out. So it becomes like the most awful experience, because the emotions as you're experiencing them, it's augmented. It's not the same. It's not like you're really recalling the relationship. You don't have the ability to process it properly. You're literally getting hit with intense emotions that you don't understand. You're not sure why they're happening. I mean, everybody that goes through this, their first thing they're going to tell you is, I don't know why I felt that way about this person, but it was overwhelming, to the point where, you could be crying multiple times a day. You could be, all your thoughts are just obsessed about this person. And that's literally what it is. And they're able to bring out those emotions from this past existence, love affair that you had with this person. And they're able to modify and amplify those emotions and make you relive them to where they control them. And then they influence you externally through a wide variety of means that I couldn't even begin to explain, but it's remote mind control. And they arrange this situation that you're having with somebody. The other type, that would be what I would call the New Age type, because it usually involves the internet, it involves spirituality, involves stuff like that. But you could just have a spiritual person that, is here to do something positive, regardless of what it is. Maybe just a small thing, but just be a good person and influence and help others. And the system wants to bog them down with something similar. So they'll pair them up. They'll get the spirit guide to tell them, hey, you need to get with so-and-so. They'll even tell you that your life mission is to help this person, that they've got emotional issues. You need to help them. You need to teach them to be compassionate. And I've seen people like this, and they get tied up in these really toxic relationships. And the purpose of it is to stop you from doing what you would have done. It wrecks your potential, because now you're bogged down with somebody that's literally a parasite that just sucks and sucks and sucks and takes away your energy. And they take away your joy. They rob you of anything positive in your life until you wind up just not wanting to do anything. and you just succumb to the, to the abuse. So those are the two main most prevalent types. I went through a situation where they reunited me with a trauma twin from a program, and that was absolutely awful. I mean, and it can go into the extreme. I mean, they can literally change your sexual orientation. I don't think that they necessarily can do that if you're just a regular person, you haven't been hijacked. But if they've hijacked you and they've done trauma splits and you've got alters, there's always going to be gay alters in just about every person that's in these programs, because they either make you pansexual or they make you gay, or they'll bring out something from your extraterrestrial past where you are basically pansexual to a degree, because you've been everybody under the sun. You've probably been multiple races. You've been multiple gender. Well, you've been either the opposite sex, whatever. There are ETs that are a combination of male and female. They're androgynous. So I'm going to say there's 3 genders there as far as the ETs go. You could be any one of those at any given time in your past, and you still have that recollection. So technically, over time, you're going to be male, female, and anything in between that, and other species. You're not always going to be human looking or reptilian or whatever you are. So, we live eternally. So there's a lot of memory there of self. So technically, gender, sexual orientation is just kind of a flexible concept. It's really where you're at the moment in the big scheme of things. And I think we'd be able to remember that. Clearly, we would recognize that if we could remember who we are in this world, and things would be a lot different. So you've got all that going on. So, but anyway, give me a second here. So in the case of sexual orientation, they changed my sexual orientation like 2 years, roughly, but it started right around the time my son was born. So by the time I met this person, he was like a full-blown nightmare, because, I had the sexual orientation shift right in the middle of a marriage. It totally wrecked me. They were bringing an alter personality out. I literally could observe myself changing my mannerisms, the way I walked and talked, the way I dressed, everything changed. I'm not that person that I am now. I'm actually somebody different, technically. I'm another version of myself than I was then. And they brought that out simply to reunite me with this other person, and they did the same thing with him. So that was a really destructive thing that they did to me, and it caused 5 years of post-traumatic stress disorder. I can talk about it now because it's behind me and I'm dealing with something else, but that was just something that they did. And that's one of the types of love bites that they can engineer with a program. If you're in the programs and you had a trauma twin and they want to use you together like that, because it's instant post-traumatic stress disorder when they put you through that. The other person involved in this tried to commit suicide. So it just gives you an idea, which, by the way, they stopped, because that's another problem with us. They drive you to suicide, and if you do it, you usually fail. It's like the movie Groundhog Day. You can kill yourself over and over again, but you wake up. It was 6:15 in the morning with Sonny and Cher playing, or is it 7:30?
Yeah.
Whatever that alarm clock was. It's like that. You took a huge dose of some medication that could kill an elephant, and you wake up the next morning to Sonny and Cher playing on your alarm clock or your cell phone, and you're right back into the matrix again. Is there a question? This is Rob. Rob's live just went dark during stream pod. Something guest said. Lovely. That's not good.
No, since we were talking about the interference in the community, I just thought I'd pull that up. And I wanted to throw in too, when you were describing the first 2 scenarios, I was like, holy shit, check. You just described probably 3 of my most serious relationships as an adult.
Well, with the narcissist?
The first 2. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was describing like really toxic narcissistic relationships. So you were going through those. Were they all narcissists? Because there's others. There's a whole nother group of people that they like to use too. There's 2 trauma victims, two main classes. You got people with narcissism, and then you got the people with borderline personality disorder. which is like the enemy of the narcissist. So you put them together, you're going to have like a massive battle. They don't like each other, but yeah, there's a lot of personality conflicts there, and I got diagnosed with that too, and I know you did, and I got it out of my system by just trying to use everything that was going wrong in my life to expand my emotional span and to be more of a compassionate person, and I worked it out, but I'm not perfect though, so I still have problems, but so does everybody else.
Yeah. And
So
no, I remembered as you were talking, the other thing that you mentioned was I always thought I had to save people. And that was two of my most serious relationships, was
yeah.
trying to fix broken partners. And of
Mhm.
course it all went to hell.
Well, that's one of the worst aspects of the love bite, because they will put you together. They will always mispair you to where you have one person that's got it more together, and that's the target. That's the one they want to get, because they've already got the narcissist. Either they're just a regular person who's got this problem, and then they just make you come together in some way, or they're in the programs as well, and then they put you together, and then there's more shenanigans going on. But it's usually, the narcissist is already easy to control, and that's the reason for all the trauma too. Just like with the military, they do the same kind of thing. It's to traumatize you, make you easier to control. And when you're dealing with people like us, the goal here is to traumatize. Now in the programs, it's traumatize, do all these things, create the trauma splits, mind wipe, reprogram. They kind of make you into a robot. But here in this world, they've got to do things to you and kind of keep you going down the road that they want you to go down, which is a dead end, and it doesn't have any exits to get off so you can get the hell out of the situation. They want to basically compromise you to where you're thinking negative all the time. And if you're thinking negative all the time, you're very easy to manipulate. One little thing goes wrong and you have a negative mindset, you're not handling things correctly anyway, you blow up. All that energy just they want to keep you in that state of mind. And that's when the parasites get you, the astral parasites and the implants. The more positive you are, the better off you are, but they make it very hard to be positive. And the only way,
I agree with that.
yeah, the only way
they do try to keep you in that lower emotional frequency because
right.
it's easier to manipulate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the election. There's a good example there. What's making people flip out? It's all the negative emotions. It's the fear. They want to drum up fear. They're not drumming up hope. Like, I want everybody to be hopeful. No, you got to be afraid of what's going on. So that's a whole different subject. It's not black and white in politics, but they want to drum up fear. If the public's gripped in fear, they're easy to control. If they're gripped in hope, then they've got a lot. Then they think for themselves. They really do. You think for yourself when you're happy, when you're doing things and you're in a good mood and everything's going well. You're planning things. You've got time to reflect. But we're in a state of panic and a negative state of mind. You're depressed. You're very limited in what your mind is doing. I mean, when I'm depressed, I don't want to think about creating anything or doing anything. So it's the perfect way to keep you. So love bites are designed for that reason, to suppress you. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say they keep you too numb to create. You're exactly right. Like, we're creator beings. They need us to manipulate the energy to create the reality they want instead of the one that helps us. Right? So that's why people understand that ability always seem to be taking the shit kicking.
And something else about creating things like, I'm getting a little sidetracked, but I've noticed that since I've been able to sense these energies and things, what I've noticed is that when you get them out of your head and you get the control that they have, and I'm just going to go by sections of the energy body from the neck up to the head. This is where the mind is affected, your emotions and so forth. And this is from real experience of how they target your energy body. From the neck down, it's everything there that they're affecting is your energy level, the way you feel, and so forth. But everything up, it's all cognitive and emotional based. It's just the way these implants and the way your energy body, like it has zones where they can affect different things. So I'm protected from here up. I'm totally exposed from my neck, from my shoulders down, so that, you know, they can. So, and I've had a lot of experiences recently where I've seen how they do things and how they cause pain, which I'll get into in a moment. But when when you shield yourself up like that, it gives you the ability to sense in the environment what's happening. And what I've noticed is that it also gives you the ability, once you've taken the zone over and it's yours again, you can now project energy into your environment. And then, and you know, like say you go into a doctor's office and everybody's grouchy, right? And the receptionist is grouchy and people are tired of waiting and everything. You can go into a doctor's office and have a smile on your face, be a TI, have a smile on your face, be respectful, not be overwhelmed, you know, not say a lot, but just be nice and everything. Just be normal and sit down and be quiet. And have the worst doctor's visit you've ever had, and have the doctor turn on you and refuse to give things like prescriptions that they normally would do. They'll tell you no, that you can't, you're not going to write you a script for this or refer you to that, and the staff will be rude. And you've done nothing wrong, right? What I found is they're using you as an antenna to broadcast bad energy into the environment around you. So when I cut off the access to my head, this whole zone right here, I realized that they weren't able to do that anymore. So that everything that was going into my environment, other than what other people were putting into it, I was in control of my own little piece of it. So I could then go into the doctor's office and do exactly what I just said and have a normal doctor's visit, and nobody would go weird on me. You know, it's, but then when you realize, okay, I can also go into a doctor's office and I can actually focus on projecting positive energy instead of just being quiet or respectful and smiling or whatever. I can do more than, you know, the five senses can actually produce. So then you realize after that, then you realize just how they were doing all this in the first place. I used to think, are they going and hitting these people around me and causing them to do things? No, they're actually using you. You're the one that has the ability to do it. You're the one that they want to shut down and then exploit and utilize in their programs. They need you to do that. So what they do is they, you know, they take you over and they control this zone. This is the best, and this is how I understand it from my own experience. I don't read anything. I don't listen to other people's podcasts when it comes to this stuff. So this is just me. And people also hear this and they're going through the same thing and they say, yeah, you're right. I understand. You're, you know, and so I haven't had anybody say, Nate, you're dead wrong. I've always had people say, yeah, I agree. And they're using you. They're using this zone around your head to project negative energy, whether you don't even know you're doing it. You're not doing anything. They just don't like you all of a sudden. You know, all of the problems they've had for their whole life for that day is now hanging on you because you're the a-hole that came in their office, but you haven't done anything. So they're manipulating that energy flow using you as the broadcast or as the conduit for it. And you don't even realize it. So suddenly you take control over this zone of yourself, your interactions with people improve right away, and you're not even doing anything. And then you have to sit back and say, okay, what did I do different this time? The answer is nothing. They just aren't doing something. And then you can add to that energy, and then you start seeing results. And then you start to realize, you know, just how much you were targeted in your life, because if they can just do that one thing, they can literally make your life a living hell with just that one strategy. And that's one of many things that they can do.
That is the best explanation and makes the most sense that I have heard on this subject. Because I was sitting there like running the scientific explanation for what you were talking about in my head. Like every cell in our body has an electric current. We project a measurable frequency from our bodies, an electromagnetic frequency. So of course, if you could figure out where the antenna is, which is the pineal gland, right? If you can figure out some way to control an individual's emotional or physical frequency and cause them to emit a agitating one, it's literal science. If two frequencies meet, they don't mix, they agitate from one another. So that is absolutely brilliant, in my opinion.
And there's another half of it too, because once that negative situation is initiated, okay, you're the targeted person. So you've had this problem before. So suddenly now you're reacting to it. It isn't a first time it's happening. First time it happens, you just want to know what you did. Like, hey, why is everybody being so rude to me? Did I offend you? I'm sorry. Did I say something? But now you've been through this before, so now you're programmed by your condition. I wouldn't say programmed. You're conditioned through these negative experiences to feed into it. Then now your mouth is moving. Now your eyes are looking at the print. Now you're projecting an intentional negative energy in your defense, and you're going to, hey, I'm being targeted. You guys were, and the last thing you'd ever want to say to anybody in a medical COINTELPRO type of scenario is to accuse the doctor and the staff of working for the government and being part of some conspiracy against you, because they're not.
Yeah.
They don't even know what's going on. You know, they're just reacting to things that they're unconscious of. I got a gnat in here, so I always have a gnat on it during a podcast. I think it's it's apparently I got a lot of friends in the bug kingdom. They like to be part of this.
You're literally bugged.
I'm bugged. Yeah, exactly.
Oh shit, that was bad. I'm sorry.
But at that point, though, you're feeding into it. So now you've literally you're using the programming on all cylinders now. So now you've created a scenario, and and these people are going to remember you, and they're not going to want you to come back in their office. It could happen at work. It could happen at the grocery store. It could happen anywhere, the gas station. You could get shot and killed over it. You get run off the road, at road rage. Anything could happen. So, it really comes down to, first and foremost, that you've got to heal yourself. And when I was in those scenarios like that, without the shielding or anything like that, I was going through it, but I had to really police myself, because I had to make sure that I didn't just start blurting out things like the doctor saying, well, I'm not going to prescribe that to you, even though you've been prescribed for the past 5 years. I'm like, yeah, I know I don't deserve it. I'm a TI. If that slips out of my mouth, it's bad news for me. And I'd catch myself, yeah, I know everybody's out to get me or whatever, and you start sounding like that. They think you're mentally ill. And then it's confirmation for everything that they sense subconsciously that you were pumping out, that they were using you to pump out. So the best way around that ultimately comes down to the first thing you would do to help to prevent that is you got to work on your issues. And you got to be aware, of course, that these things are happening. So that's where somebody like me would come in. Somebody who's been through it can help somebody else and do a podcast like this. You can get this information and you can try to apply it and just be observant of the possibility that it's correct, or at least partially correct. And then you really got to work on yourself. So you kind of have to know what's going on and how it works, the mechanics of the whole thing. And then you really got to work on your own issues, because the only way out of a situation like I described is you've got to be diplomatic in a way that prevents things from getting worse. Because you're only going to go so far with this. They're going to make sure you hit a brick wall at some point as you push back, but you've got to be able to gently push back and try to make common ground with the people you're having these interactions with. And sometimes you just got to find a new doctor, whatever. You got to go to get another job, get away from the person, whatever it is. But it isn't always a salvageable situation. But they are using you to do these things. And you'd be surprised at how good they are at it, because I've had people react to me, just visual appearance, in a kind of a psychic street theater scenario that they were playing out, where I was being used as the conduit. And I would just kind of catch somebody suddenly, like this woman spun around in the aisle. She was a store employee, and she looked, and I was the other end of the aisle. And she gave me this crazy look, like, what the fuck, I'm sorry to say the F word, but, and this had to do with the way I was dressed. It was just because I had shorts that were shorter than the shorts at the knee. I didn't have like shorts that are up my crack of my rear end. I had like a 4-inch inseam. It was gym shorts that I had made out of jean material in India, because I didn't want to get, first of all, it's hot and humid where I live at. And for the last 30 years, knickers or lorts were the only thing you could buy. and that was it.
Yeah.
No, it's like, and you see guys at the beach or whatever, they got like white legs, and they're from the knee down, they're all tan, but the rest of them, it's not a redneck anymore. I don't know, it's a white, chicken leg,
Yeah.
So, but all you have to do in this society is change the way you dress and go back to an earlier time, and all of a sudden the fashionistas come out, and it's the people you'd least expect. But it's because in a lot of cases there's social biases going on, and they're able to do this and create these scenarios that trigger these people. That girl probably wouldn't have given it. She probably wouldn't even paid attention to me if it wasn't for them, but they did something energetically to cause that. And I made eye contact with her at that very moment. So it's very weird, because when you remember these things, it's just like a scene out of a horror movie. You just see a piece of it, and it's like you could almost play the Psycho music at the same time she saw me. It's like eek, 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 and she's looking at me. So, but so that's one of the ways they get you. So looks like you got something you want to ask me.
Yeah, it's actually something you just reminded me of that happened to me a few months ago, and it's very similar to what you were just talking about. I was in the grocery store, and I was at the checkout, and I was like, hey, can I get another, like a points card? Because you collect points, you get free groceries, blah, blah, blah. You still got to play the game in this reality, right? So I was like, can I get another points card? And the lady's like, can you not just use your cell phone? I'm like, my wife doesn't like to carry a cell phone. She would like a card. And then the guy behind me gets involved in, well, why doesn't she just get a damn phone? I'm like, because she doesn't want to carry one. And I like quickly just paid for my groceries and stepped out. I shit you not. They started fighting. The
Really?
guy behind me and the cashier started arguing with each other because I pulled myself out of the situation. And then I don't want to call them NPCs, but they were both freaking agitated, and they started going at each other because I got out of the situation. It was insane. Like I stood groceries watching, and that could have been me.
Yeah, your stream
Like
is breaking
it's
a little bit.
Oh yeah, it was just bizarre. Like these people just started arguing with each other because they wanted to argue with me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
here's one funny one. I was at this place called Sports Authority, a sporting goods store, and I'd been in there purchasing workout gear, like sleeveless shirts. They were like made out of a synthetic fabric. They're supposed to wick sweat from you, but cotton is far better in my opinion, because all this did was made me feel like I was wearing saran wrap or some kind of plastic wrap, and I'm sweating under it. But it was, so I bought the workout gear, and I happened to be wearing it. And I think I was buying more of it, and it was called undergear or something like that. And anyway, I'm standing in the line getting checked out, and I'm the only one in the line except for the person in front of me. And then all of a sudden, I feel this terrible energy behind me, and it feels like somebody's staring me down and like mocking me, right? Now, normally you just feel a presence behind you, but this literally felt like a wall of just bad energy. And I'm aware of it, and I'm watching the person get checked out in front of me, and I'm like, and my wife was like 10 feet ahead at the other end, up against the store window, because we're at the front of the store. And suddenly I just, like, what is going on behind me? I look back, and there's this guy, and he looked like he got off a construction site. He's got a white shirt on, like an undershirt, covered in dirt, ketchup, mustard stains, some lunch, and he just looks like he's working concrete or something, or a carpenter all day. He's got a pair of short jeans on, the cutoffs with the strings. He's got a pair of old work boots on with those socks with the yellow stripe. It's got the yellow, with the brown stripe. The kind you remember we used to pull them up as far as we could and then try to run around. They'd always fall down. We'd pull them back up. And after a while, the socks would lose their elasticity. Mom, I need new socks. But the foot part was still good. It's just they wouldn't stay up because it was a stupid idea, And so he had all that going on. He had a fishing rod, and he thought I was gay. And he was like staring me down. He wouldn't get within 10 feet of me. He was standing about 10 feet behind me. And it was so bad that he was making faces at me because I was wearing this sleeveless undergear shirt, and my wife saw it, and I'm like, and I'm feeling this, and I pay for whatever I bought. I think it was another one of those forbidden shirts. And then I walked to her and I'm like, did you see what was going on behind me? She goes, oh yeah, I saw it. And he was making all kinds of faces. And that was just another example of it. And it's just like, what have I done to deserve all this stuff? Well, you bought this workout shirts, and then you had some shorts cut shorter than the length of your knee. So you're automatically an honorary member of the Village People. I don't know, man. It was so ridiculous. But that happened multiple times, but it was all timed around that sexual orientation change of the altar. And then it shifted. Then later I shifted back somewhere in the middle of all that. So it's just, they've done that to me to the point where, I think now that when I actually got this area taken care of, I believe I have control over it now, because they're not able to get into my head like they were. They're not able to manipulate me emotionally. They're not able to. And by the way, the V2K is totally gone. The only remnants I actually have of it is occasion I'll feel a pressure, and they'll start playing some music. It'll be a loop, and then I just block it out, and it'll go, and they'll try to get in, and then I put up, and I just kind of focus on it, and I just tune it right out again. And they make various attempts at it. It's usually when I'm under stress or not feeling well, or I'm really tired, something like that. It's like when I'm physically down, especially after the directed energy hit, it was like they were really trying to pump it in air to that. But that's about it. But before it was nonstop. And I want to get back to the love bite stuff. There's more to it. But I was going to talk about a positive one that can turn into a love bite, which is the situation I'm in now. But so what I wanted to mention, let me think here. Let me just go with what I was going to, let's stick with the love bite. I'm kind of getting sidetracked here. So anyway, the love bite, right? So there is another type of love bite that they can do. And this is one that's completely legitimate. Like it isn't really a love bite to start with. You may have a pact with someone. A lot of times people will come in here as a pair, and usually it's a couple sometimes. They will come here for a life mission. And the goal is to meet up with each other at some point throughout this experience, if everything goes right. And when you go into these experiences, you have the ability to look forward in time. You even have the ability in the multidimensional mind state of mind to communicate with your future self, to give feedback on what not to do and what happened, depending on the way the timelines, because, there's a lot of variables there, and timelines will shift and change. So, you can get a good idea of what you're in for. So you will know if you're going to come here and be hijacked, and so on and so forth. So in the case of myself, I don't want to, get into this really deep, because it tends to get, it hurts. So I found out that, I have a partner here, somebody that I was with for a long time. And we came in here under the agreement of finding one another. And that happened in 2020. I was on, I was on YouTube. It was a Leak Project video. And I had been starting conversations under his videos for a long time. And, the Leak Project's kind of fading away now. But at that point in time, it was really popular. It was shows every day. Everybody was tuning in. It was good stuff. And I was like leaving, because I was having these experiences, but I didn't want to go public. So I just would start conversations. And I was talking about things that similar to what I'm talking about now, but I didn't understand them. So I was using different terminology and things like that. But I started one on, it was a discussion about how they will tell my labs that they're a pagan god, for example, and how that they all can't be Zeus, for example. Can't be 10 Zeuses running around, or 100. Some of these have to be false memory implants, or just they're being told this to boost their ego. There could be a real Zeus out there that's in the recycling trap. That was the original Zeus that's now fallen from grace with the program, and now he's in deep shit. He's here too. I don't know. There's a whole lot of variables there. Because when you look into this, you find that these gods are actually ETs coming here to play God with different regions of people. So there is a real Zeus. There was there's an Enki and all these others, but it's just, it was an individual. Now, was that individual operational on Mars when they built the statues and the pyramids there that look like ours? Could be. Could have been the same person. Could have been another actor filling the position. Could be somebody under a controlled state of consciousness who thinks they're this God, because that's the best way to portray a God, is when you really believe it. And they can mind wipe you and program you. Why couldn't they do something like that with one of their own and make them the God, right? So,
yeah.
Anyway, hold on. Kind of getting sidetracked where I was going with this. So, I was originally talking about that, and I was referring to coming in here as a pair. So I'm not really, and I was talking about the leak projects. I'm getting off course here. I do apologize. Sorry about that, guys. So anyway, I meet this person, she reaches out to me and we start this conversation, and she's really persistent on getting to know who I am, and which I thought was unusual. So I felt male energy for some reason, and I thought it was a guy. Turns out it was a woman, right? Turns out it was actually a past life husband. The person I was supposed to meet when I came here, and they switched their genders around, and I'm just wrapping my head around all this shit. And since then, it's been a real struggle because, all of these emotions came out, and they came out on her end, but not to the same level. And some memories came out on my end, but not to the same level with her. And what was going on is that they used her and tried to turn this into a love bite. So that's what I'm getting at here. They can actually take a reunion that was meant to be for all the right reasons and attempt to sabotage it, because they know what you're here to do. That's the thing. They know exactly what you're here to do, and they can use time. I call it time referencing. They can look forward in time, and they can create statistical models of probability of what's going to happen with you, what you were most likely going to do. And then they create a plan catered directly, strictly for you, to stop you or to co-opt anything you're trying to do. This is where these handlers come in at. And the handlers, for those who don't know, and this is information that came through Olivia James, but it also came through all those hours that I spent with the V2K assholes, talking to them. We know that they're actually a core, like super soldiers. They're actually a core of my labs, a grouping of them that are specially trained for this purpose, to handle us. So it's my labs, it's alters handling other alters. And in this case, it's someone's alter handling the original self that's living in society. It isn't just like people who are contracted in the military industrial complex through a series of smaller companies where it's like they're like a proxy to a larger company and you can't trace it. Sometimes they use private security. We hear stories like that. In this case, we're dealing with the very high end of it, because they're not going after regular people for political reasons or just doing research and development with remote mind control. They're actually going after their valuable assets and trying to rein them in and keep them under control. So in this case, they knew that there was a connection between us and there was something that we were supposed to do together. So they engineered a love bite in that situation. And thankfully, we worked our way through that. But I had to recognize what they were doing. And through that recognition, I was able to kind of throttle back some of the things that I was being emotionally driven to do. Because ultimately, what they wanted me to do was to go too far with the entire thing, to the point where it would just ruin everything. Or use her to basically put me in a state of perpetual despair, which was another thing that was happening. So what they were doing is just like in that regular love bite, they bring out these emotions. So they were hijacking my consciousness, accessing the part of me that has all of the memories and emotions for this person, and then bringing those emotions out, merging it with me such as what they do when they take traits and emotions from your alters and put them in you. They're just kind of, they refer to it as personality rearrangement. I don't know if that's the technical term for it. It's a term that the handler used when they were talking to me and explaining what they did. And it's like taking pieces of your other parts. And what I've noticed is that since I've started a reintegration process with one alter, I realized that what they've really done is they've taken our personalities here and they've watered them down. So they've taken all of that. If you think of somebody like here's your lifespan, when it's got my hands up here, it's like from like A to B, it's like from start to finish. So like from here, this is where you started your existence and you're right here now. This is the present. All of that is your experiences, and everything in that shapes you who you are. So because you have such a rich past and such, you've been in existence for so long, they have literally, if you look at all of those lifetimes as personality traits that are blended together and homogenized into who you are, over eons of time, they literally can go in there and extract what they want out of that and put that into an alter. And they water your personality down. They take your being and they literally they diminish it by fracturing. And that's what it feels like. Whether there's a quantitative way to measure that, I don't know, but I'm just telling you what I feel. So when you reintegrate and you take something back, you gain something, from your original self that they took away. You may be the original self, but you're like, think of yourself as like a peach, and you're the core of the peach. Every bit of that peach is all the meat, all the juice, the whole flesh of the peach is gone, and you're just that core. And then they add little bits and layers back to it. It's like it's like a core with onion leaves. You just keep adding another layer to it, so they can just change the layers and just create a personality that they want in you that they feel is manageable. But when you start taking that stuff back, you start taking back things. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. In the case with me, I'm integrating with a part of myself that has a lot of strengths. And on the other end of that, by interacting with that other part of me and the little bit of interaction I had, I recognized that part of me told me that I'm using you to get my emotional span back. So you've got the emotional span, I've got the memories, and I've got some attributes that they took from you. So what they did is they took the assertiveness from me. They made me less assertive. They took away my ambition. They took away everything that it was to be me and who I was over that, like I said, that whole expanse of time, because you have the opportunity when you're not in a matrix like this and you're living the full reality that you deserve to be as a free sovereign being. You can engineer your personality by what you do, by your experiences. You can become the person that you want to be. And everybody does that to a certain degree, unless they give up on themselves. So everything that I built and became that I wanted to be over eons of time, all they've done is grab me and dice me up and take those accomplishments, those improvements, those skill sets, and pull them away from me and exploit them and put them into different versions of myself that are mind wiped. So when you start pulling those back, you start taking those things back. It isn't just memories, it's abilities as well, but it's personality traits. So when you die and you get out of this place, you've got to pull all of that back. All of that's got to come and reintegrate into yourself, and you've got to sort it all out. You've got to take the pain and the triumphs and everything together, and you've got to work through it. So by integrating, I've taken pieces back that they stole from me. So thankfully, the way this has worked out, the things that I've taken back is inner strength, leadership ability, just being assertive, being that person that sets the rules for an interaction with somebody. Like if you're conducting like a business transaction, okay, and let's just say you're selling an item out of your house that you no longer use. So your friend says, "Hey, I'll buy it from you, but I don't have the money yet. Give me 2 weeks." And you're like, okay, well, this person has no intent of paying. Your intuition tells you that. their track record sucks. You'll be lucky to get anything out of them, even a thank you. And after you give it to them, you probably won't hear from them again because they don't want to pay you for it. But yet that version of me that they left would give into that, wanting to be in that relation, wanting to have a relationship, wanting to have a friend that we exchange favors, knowing full well that that person's toxic and is the last person I should associate with. The version of me that they built and left me here to languish literally at the mercy of all of the barbaric people around me that want to take advantage of me in this terrible system, because that's their means of survival. I got to take more for me and less for you. Well, they're going to take advantage of you. They're not going to respect you either. So pulling that back, it's like, okay, I have control of this situation. You will pay me when you have the money. And if I still have it, great. You can leave a deposit. I'll have it. And when you get the money, you give it to me. That person who's dishonest or semi-honest will actually respect you for that. They won't respect you at all if you give in to their demands. I know you've probably noticed that yourself. These types of entitled people have zero respect for you if you give it to them. But if you make them work for it or earn it, they instantly have respect for you. They may not fully respect you because they don't respect, but they have more respect. And even the people that just want to take advantage, it's like, loan me a few bucks. I'll tell you a week, but it'll take 2 months, only because you're out of the way when I go home from work. And it's too much of a trouble to stop by your house. Maybe only be $20, but it's the thought that matters, But if you put your foot down, that person won't do that anymore, and they'll like you better for it. It's very weird the way that people act in this world and the way society works. But that's just an example, man, of trying to heal, because they take away those attributes that you need. And then they put you in a compromised position. And then you're surrounded by people that want to take advantage of you because you're pulled down to a lower rung in society. And that's where they keep you. So it's social status is tied into this very, very acutely, just like everything else. It's all part of this scenario. If they can push you down in your social status to where you have to associate with people that are toxic and users, and that were there just to get, a fix or whatever it is. They got their habits, their wants. They don't care about you. If they can rip you off on a home improvement job and then go spend it on drugs, that's a victory for them. They made it through the week. They're off to the next victim the following week, and you're left with a mess. So they were putting me in those situations just like they were putting me in the other ones by using me as a conduit. So they use you to wreck your own life. That's when you start taking the control back, you recognize just how much of a player you were in, the targeting, because it always goes back to consent.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to say I totally agree with what you were saying about putting your foot down and setting boundaries with people about, your energy, because that's really what money is. In this current construct, that's what money is. It's a representation of our energy because that's what they made up and we're supposed to believe in it. But I 100% agree with putting down boundaries. But on a personal level, I'm just going to say some of the people that owe me money that I will never hear from again because they owe me money is some of the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah, there's that happens too. And here's what I found in those scenarios like that, when you're engaging somebody like that, the mistake that I was making was that, and goes back to taking another attribute away from me. Affects, my overall, it affects my judgment. So this is an area where they affected my judgment, is that I would literally test somebody out at my own expense, knowing full well they were going to screw me. But I'd put myself in that scenario and mindlessly do it. And it's like, and sometimes you'd catch yourself like, why am I doing this? And it's just like, I just want to see what happens. It's just, so you once again, it's like self-defeating programming. You're going to go and put your hand back into the fire where it's going to burn you. And you're going to, and then after the fact, you can say, well, at least now I know. But the way you really should do it is you sense it and you stay the hell away to start with. You know, it was almost as if I was like, just had nothing better to do but martyr myself to test my intuition. Almost so stupid, you know, but you're not really using your intuition as an offensive tool to protect yourself and your family. You're just opening yourself up to be a victim and then say, okay, they're off the list. How many of those can you go through before you get off the list? Before you don't have a house for them to take from, or you don't have anything, because they'll leave you broke. Your friends sometimes are your worst enemies, and they'll leave you broke. And you know, when you need them, they're nowhere to be found because they weren't friends to start with. So you know, it's when they said to me, "You're in an engineered lifetime." That's what they meant. They're engineering all of this, but they didn't tell me the secret, which is that I'm a 50-50 partner. They need me to do it. They need my input. They need my consent, my participation, my stupidity, and being naive, and then just going and doing it over and over again. You know, setting myself up for it.
That is exactly it. Like, we have to consent to it, and if we say no, we want to do it this way, there's not much they can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. And consent is engineered. It's also engineering means coerced. You know, and they will put you in situations where you feel like you need to consent to a toxic relationship for whatever reason, either just to get yourself through a period of a rough time that you got to deal with somebody you never would associate with, for whatever financial reasons, or whatever it is. You know, it's I'm not talking about going to a job you hate. I'm talking about just dealing with people and the type of people that you find yourself involved with. Especially like if you get into substance abuse or just medicating yourself with drugs just to kill the pain, you're not going to find good people at bars and liquor stores. You're definitely not going to find good people at some party someplace where everybody's doing crack or, you know, some opioids or something like that. I mean, you know, I never really found good people in the Grateful Dead shows either, you know, when I was doing that. It's like all love and happiness and peace and everything. And then you know, the drugs wear off and you realize somebody ripped off your stash and they overcharged you for this, and then your wallet's missing, and, you know, and whatever it is, you know, and or your acid's bad, it's fake. So that was one of the places where I thought that I could go and everything would be cool, but I found some of the worst people there, just parasites, just like everywhere else. And I thought to myself, you know, I was like 15, 16. It's like, there's no place to go. There's literally no place to go to get away from these people. They're everywhere. They may look different, and they may appeal in a different way, and you may look better, but, you know, that all that down to earth bohemian hippie stuff is just out the window because capitalism is still present. So is dishonesty.
I totally agree. We've gone about an hour and 20 minutes, and I know we're not going to get to everything we had written down, but you wanted to talk about the ET Psyop, and I would love to hear what that is about.
Oh, well, yeah, there's a lot of that going on. So as far as we know, you know, we have these sightings going on with the drones. Okay. They've pretty much faded away now. They were a big thing. These aren't drones. I mean, some of these are military and civilian drones, but a lot of these are anti-gravity, you know, technology that that the military has, but they don't admit to having. So when I first looked at it, I'm thinking, okay, they're staging something using the military tech that I know they have. And then it just started to get a little bit out of hand. It just wasn't fitting that pattern. It's like, well, why would they be doing that? The only thing that I could think of is, well, you know, it's an election. Trump, you know, is at that point, I think he was getting ready to be elected, or they started after the election. I don't remember, but it was right around the time of November. So it was an upcoming Trump victory, and I figured, okay, they're going to roll out all sorts of things. We're going to have plagues. We're going to have engineered earthquakes and tornadoes. And we had some strange hurricane behavior right away. They didn't waste any time. You know, a hurricane hitting hitting the Blue Ridge Parkway and completely putting Asheville underneath water was nobody would have ever believed it if you told them that was going to happen. You know, and because hurricanes never do it that, and that went all the way from the Gulf of Mexico straight up. I think I followed the Mississippi River or something. It's like right up. But so we have the story about that going on, and you know, so in far sites in communication with extraterrestrials, besides for the remote viewing. So what I've noticed is that, looking into that and being skeptical, but also being hopeful and following their work, and also getting feedback from my altar and everything else, I know that there's an ET war coming. Okay. And there has to be, because otherwise we're screwed. There's an extraterrestrial war coming. The altars that we all have who are in the programs, they're waking up just like we are. So I truly believe that the purpose of all of this, of a lot of us coming here, knowing we were going to get hijacked, has to do with being a Trojan horse. So every one of us, they take us, they fragment us, they make multiples of us, and they put us to work as an army, as a proxy army for these ETs. It's a workforce and it's an army. And so they're using us at that capacity. Well, how do you bring something like that down? And it makes perfect sense that you would send people in with the capability of breaking the AI mind control, waking up as their current self, their original self here in society, waking up like we're doing, talking about our experiences, and then connecting with those altars that we have in the programs who are also waking up parallel with us at the same time that we're having this awakening. And that the mind control is such that in order to prevent that, they'd have to keep recycling us before we got to age 30. They refer to that as a sleeper. So they would kill you and they'd recycle you back in society so that they could keep the original self asleep, because the original self is apparently the part that starts to wake up, then the altars wake up. It could be the opposite. It could be, or they come up, or they start waking up at the same time. But I think that the original self is the key to this. Once that awakening starts, the altars start to follow suit. So in a situation like this, we would have an entire army that they've created, which is essentially a house of cards. It's not as fortified as they think. They think the AI is controlling everyone, but people are waking up. So when this hot war breaks out, I firmly believe that there's going to be a percentage, not a full, and it's not going to be everyone, but there's going to be a percentage of this military, the secret space program, with all the different timelines, because this isn't going to be just one timeline. This is going to be everyone that is in the situation. Every timeline that's in play for control they're going to have this war, and we're in all those timelines being utilized like this. So those parts of us, just think. Ask yourself, Don, if you were in control of, say, a spacecraft, or you had some job on a ship, or whatever your situation was, and you knew everything that you know personally right now, would you follow orders knowing that there was a war, like a hot war breaks out, and the enemy is your savior, is the ones that you used to be part of before you came here and got yourself into this? Are you gonna fire the weapons and take the orders? I wouldn't.
Of course not. No.
And I think, and there's enough of us in all levels of this, from top down, from the very top of their military all the way down. They've got people waking up throughout the entire system. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing enough of a mutiny that would take place that their human proxy army would be virtually useless. And then it would be just the negative extraterrestrials with their self-serving agenda against the positive ones. So their ace in the hole is gone. They've got to do the fighting themselves. So they're severely compromised. They've literally built an army out of Trojan horses. And the more we wake up and the more we do with this disclosure, the more they wake up, the more integration takes place, the more connections. When they get their emotional span back, damn well they're not going to follow orders.
Yeah. On a personal level, that was one of the biggest fuck ups they ever made, was letting me figure out everything that is unlocked since my super soldier memories bled through. That was their mistake. Like, they pushed so far that I started to figure out just how smart I was.
Well, yeah, you can lie, but it can only last for so long. Eventually you forget what you said, you screw up, you reveal yourself. You can't create a situation. You can't create a military where everyone's lied to and mind wiped in order for them to be part of it and expect it to last. You know, it may work. It works for a period of time, but then it always comes to an end. The same thing will happen with the Greys. You know, they were in the same situation. Basically, they took them and put them in these bodies and they mind controlled them and turned them into, I mean, they turned them into, it's the same process as the super soldiers, but they put you in a different body and they do more mind control. So each Grey probably has potentially a couple of thousand other alters. And somewhere in there, there's an original self. So their situation is much like ours, but they use us. They make slaves out of us. So getting back to the psyop aspect of it, the biggest psyop that they have is to stop us from waking up, because they have to use us. So they have to take the chance. They're stupid. Anybody that does evil and lies is ultimately stupid anyway. It's not a sustainable path. It's not gonna work permanent. It's not a way to do things. It doesn't sustain itself. So they have to go through all this effort, all the targeting, all of this stuff that they do to us to keep us under control, to prevent this from happening. And it just isn't going to work. It's not working. So that's where the psyops come in. The psyops are to convince you that something else is going on, and to trick you. When you talk about raising the consciousness and getting people aware that we live in a spiritual prison run by these extraterrestrials, and that they're controlling the human afterlife to some degree. We don't know to what, but we know they've got control with this tunnel of light, and we know what it does. So they've got to use the psyop itself to keep that system going. It's a very weak, flimsy prison. It's like having a prison, calling it a supermax prison, but there's no bars, there's no doors. You can leave whenever you want, but everyone's lied to, and they're told there's bars and there's doors and you can't leave. But the moment somebody does, it's like the movie Idiocracy. He was trying to escape from jail, and he realized all he had to do was get in the other line. It was going out of the jail, so the one going in. And everybody was dumb.
I love the flea circus analogy for this. I don't know if you know, but how they make flea circuses, or they used to. I don't imagine anybody buys them anymore, because who the fuck wants fleas in their house? But the way they used to train fleas for flea circuses is they would put them in a container of a certain height, and they were raised there, and they knew they could only jump so high. And then as they got generational, even the children would only jump so high. And then you can take the container away, and that band of fleas is now bred to only jump so high. The other fleas won't jump any higher than the rest, even the next generations. It's the same principle. We've been encapsulated in this prison, or whatever you want to call it, basically a giant flea circus, and we only jump so high.
And like fleas, we bite each other. We're bloodsuckers.
Exactly. The relevance between Earth and a flea circus is almost ridiculous.
Yeah, it reminds me of that South Park episode where they had the semen, they had the sea monkeys, and they poured actually semen in there from a sperm bank, and they became like little people. And then they built an idol of the one kid, and then the other kid was on the other side of the fish tank. And they're like, wow, they're building an army. And they had two idols of that was their god. It was like the one kid was the one god and the other. And then all of a sudden they nuked each other and the whole fish tank blew up. So, yeah. It's kind of the same thing, but that's a good analogy, though. We're basically a cosmic flea circus. They've trained us how high to jump.
It really is like that's.
So here we are now with the far side stuff. So there is a psyop going on in the New Age community, and I just caught wind of this about a week ago. A friend of mine sent me a video. It was a Christian video. It was done by somebody who was, tying the Bible in with the disclosure and trying to make sense of it. Of course, they always come to the same conclusion: it's demons, right? But anyway, they had a very interesting woman on there, a very New Agey lady, maybe in her 30s or 40s. She had a crystal on and stuff, and she had a hairstyle that kind of reminded me of the images of like the Galactic Federation of Light. She had like a Palladian haircut, more or less. I don't know if it had anything to do with her infatuation with it or what, but she was talking about these sightings. She was saying that these drones are extraterrestrial. Same thing the Farsight Institute was saying, except the purpose of it is to enlighten, to raise the consciousness, at which point Enki, who's frozen, cryogenically frozen in Antarctica, his pod will open up and he will thaw out and revive himself. And then he will become the savior of humanity. You see, so that is one example of a new age psyop that's running right now. So if you want to take, if there's a lot of people that think maybe Farsight is involved in a psyop. Now they're calling it a psychological operation because that's what it is. It's social engineering. And I don't know if you saw the interview that we did on Rob's channel. It was my podcast partners and Rob, and we were in. What happened was Courtney Brown used the term psyop, and I think our team had a problem with that because he's very tied into terminology. You know, for him, he had a hard time accepting that there was a different type of psyop. And we had to explain to Courtney Brown that some people react that way because, they hear psyop, they think of one type of psyop, not one for positive reasons. So I said, well, this is social engineering. But it is an op, though. I mean, they're showing up, they're showing their craft, they're making a nuisance of themselves for a longer period of time to get people questioning things. So if that's what's really happening, then there's supposed to be another wave of this. But it only makes sense if you're the opposing side so what you need to do is create a counter psyop. So now the counter psyop is that this ushers in the return of Enki. And there's a whole group of people whose names I can't mention because if I do, you'll be besieged by trolls and I'll probably be getting threats emailed to me and so forth. And these people get really pissed off and upset and enraged if you even question, even just slightly graze their particular influencer with a skeptical question. You've got a bullseye right on you. And I think everybody probably knows who I'm talking about. There's a lot of pageantry there and a lot of spacey type of props going on. But so anyway, that's one particular, what I would call a psyop, pushing that thing. But now you have a different version of it where you have it now tied in with Farsight's information, then tied into the return of Enki story. So literally you've got people waiting for the return of Jesus on the Christian side. And then on the other side, you've got the return of Enki running parallel with it from the New Age perspective, the New Age contactee perspective.
Yeah.
And this basically proves my point. People don't like when I say this, but a lot of what these people are channeling are cosmic bullshitters. And finally, Farsight, has done a remote viewing. They did a recent project where they remote viewed the Bashar character, the one that's being channeled and has been for years. And there's another one called Germaine, which is another ET that's coming through that a woman is channeling. I don't remember her name. And they use those two as an example. And what they found is that it's a sophisticated psychological operation involving mostly grays, but at the top of it, the supervisors are reptilian with a couple of human ETs in the mix or possibly military. So it's exactly what I was saying. It's a combination of the reptilians, the grays, all the negative ETs that we deal with, and the military, various militaries, depending on what country you're in. Probably that has to do with what, military either has knowledge of the operation or is participating in it. And so you're channeling, and this isn't everybody, this is a certain percentage of those who are getting this false information, these psyops. They're channeling these beings who are telling them false information. And naturally, you would have a counterintelligence operation. This is what really gets me. I had a terrible reception in this community. It's called a spiritual narcissist, by pointing out that there's a psyop going on, a spiritual psyop, a psychic psyop. It involves the military. Now, everybody was cool with the concept of it's Satan doing it. Everybody's on board with that. Nobody even argues, okay? Then you say, well, there's some evil spirits. Well, that goes along with Satan too. So everybody's on board with that. There's probably some ETs lying out there. Oh, most people are now on board with that. But then when you say, well, the government's involved, then all of a sudden it becomes like, well, how's that possible? No, and it comes from the same mouths of the people that listen to the secret space program stories all the time. It's just like, why can't you just 2 + 2 is 4? They're going to have a counterintelligence operation to confuse us, to get us to stop us from waking up. Okay, so in other words, instead of me integrating an altar, instead of me being part of a support group and helping other people and them helping me, instead, I'm sitting there being targeted, probably to a lesser degree, but I'm fixated on the latest Galactic Federation update and when the Savior's going to come. So I'm neutralized.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely useless to what I've come here to do. And I'm fixated on waiting for this help. And a lot of those people are probably, had a mission, had something they were supposed to do, but now they're a troll. Now they're pissed off because all that energy, all that passion to do something positive is now directed into propping up this person who's being lied to and deceived and mind controlled, who's then doing it to them. And then they're going out and pushing this movement and this story and attacking anybody that questions it. So there you go. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems in our community, and still is. And it's starting to get better. It's starting to get better, but it's got a long way to go. And once it does, there'll be a lot more people in this community, because a lot of those outliers who don't know they're in the programs, who don't know they've been hijacked, and don't know that their abductions are negative instead of positive, those people are going to start coming in, and our circle is going to get bigger. But the psyops have to end, and people have to see it for what it is. It should be so obvious now that no one should be arguing with me. Not every, I'm not saying every time somebody channels something, it's cool. There's a percentage of it is negative, and they're lying to you. And
Yeah.
you got to know what all the different psyops are at any given time. I wasn't aware of this last one. But there's literally a psyop piggybacking on the Farsight information right now, and the situation with the drones. Now, a lot of us are kind of getting intuitive information. So we're feeling that there's an event coming. Okay, we know something's coming. Okay, this whole thing, in some way, resolves itself, but in stages is how I feel it. I feel an ET war coming, and then I don't see things rapidly changing in society. I think it takes a lot longer than that, because you still have the corruption and the negative social systems, and everything else has to be gradually dismantled and restructured, reinvented, all of that. But what's going on behind the scenes, and involves our altars, the secret space program, and this ET war coming, all of that is going to happen. It may even happen completely where nobody's even aware of it, except for people like us. And then hopefully we'll see a wave of change. We're starting to see that now. We're seeing like things change, but nobody's really 100% on board with trusting it either way. Our team thinks the sky's falling and Trump's Hitler. A lot of us think that, have more of a realistic approach and see this a little bit different, and say, okay, we got a lot of positive things happening for the first time ever. Let's utilize the positives. What was that again?
It was actually a comment that.
Yeah, and Trump could easily be that person. This all could be a psyop, okay? But you have to understand, when you look at what's going on, they've done these psyops before, but they never dismantled their cash cow. They never destroyed their own infrastructure to prove a point, to get us sucked into further into the psyop. So if you fundamentally break down the system that's been controlling everybody, at least in the United States, and then through their foreign policy, everybody else and their influence, if you're dismantling the cash cow, you're literally cutting them off at the knees. You're taking their money supply away, and you're crippling the intelligence agencies, because U.S. aid was one of the bigger core supplies of money that they could use to do all this crap all over the place. It wasn't just their wasteful spending. People get upset that they have some kind of like there's a school over there and somewhere in the heart of Islam, like an Islamic country that's fundamentalist, and there's a trans clinic there being funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars, or they're circulating a comic book about trans people in the middle of Saudi Arabia or the middle of Iraq or like the middle of Iran someplace where if you get caught with it, they probably hang you or throw you off a building. We're paying for that, but that has nothing to do with making people's lives better, making people more tolerant. We're doing it to stir up crap and to, we have an agenda. They have an agenda. They're using all this money, bankrupting the United States. We've got virtually shitty healthcare. We got all these problems. We're the world's police, and all we do is create terrorism. We make the terrorists, and then we fight them at everybody else's expense. Well, you wouldn't dismantle that apparatus just to prove a point that was part of a psyop to get everybody to be tricked into supporting a next Hitler. It's just there's too many things happening going the other direction to say it's Hitler. But I mean, these things will have to work themselves out. The problem is that at what expense? We've lost the podcast. The podcast is still there, but we're not all part of it anymore. Everything's fucked up. And I barely talked to Arkeem at all at this point. He sent me like a picture or two and stuff. It was so abrupt that it ended that way. And it was a wake up call for me because I realized just how fragile everything that you build in this community really is. It's as strong as its weakest link. And in the case of all of us, we're all weak links,
Oh yeah. I was one bad dream away from losing my shit completely. So
yeah. Which is why I say you got to give each other lots of chances. You got to be forgiving. I mean,
yeah.
If he reached out to us and said, "Hey, I don't know what I was thinking. I still don't like Trump, but it isn't worth throwing the stuff. It isn't worth throwing it all away and alienating everybody and just making the situation worse. We're all still here regardless of who's in office. And we've got something we have to do that's completely separate from that. I'm not here to do, political crap on YouTube. I could easily have a political channel. It would be equally as shadow banned and nobody'd see it because I'm not the regular person. I could have a woodworking channel and nobody'd see it. I'd have 10 views and 100. I could have 200 videos and 10 subscribers, and it could be the best content ever, but nobody ever finds it because I'm on the list. But we're not here to do political videos. We're actually here to get our story out. We have a completely different mission, and that's why I never wanted to get political, but apparently it went that way. And it's a real shame. So, I support Trump. I support what he's doing, the positive stuff. I don't support the negative stuff. I think we could all agree on something like that. If Biden did something good, great. I'm not going to shit on it because Biden did it. It's got to be my guy in there. If it's not my guy, then I'm against it. Doesn't make any sense. You got to take it's like you're in the woods and you have to find things so you find a fish hook. Great, I can go fishing now. I got some 550 cord in my shoelaces. I can make some fishing line with that. I can get some leaves together. I can make a fire with some brush. I can build something out of wood. I can, I got to use what I have. You got to use all these things. There's positive things happening. Make use of them. Don't take them for granted. And certainly don't just shit on all of it, because if you do, you're just drumming up fear, and that just makes it worse. The worst thing about this is basically putting people in a state of fear and anxiety, especially in this community. We've got enough of it. And all that does, it makes us all more susceptible to more attacks and manipulation. And that's what you see. When I do, we did that one podcast it was about, I think, relationships, right? On Disclosure Now. And if you look at the comment section, there may be 8 or 10 comments, or maybe even 3 or 4. Okay. Inject politics in it, get everybody fighting, and all of a sudden you've got 40, 50, 60, 80 comments under a video on a channel that never got any discussion. And I have to ask, are they deleting are they removing the comments? And then now that we're fighting, now that it's time to let everybody be seen, let everybody's comments be seen, it's almost like they either pull back the shadow banning in the comment section, or or all of these people are programmed to gravitate towards negativity, and they love controversy. So now they're here to see this whole thing go to crap. Now they're interested in it because it's miserable and it's bad, and now it's just like everything else that they're used to. I don't know. Probably a little bit of both. I just wish it was different. I just really wish it was different, and I hope it will be eventually. But it's like you're just gonna have to. I have to do it. You got to do it. You got to go out there and preach unity and tell people to put their differences aside.
Absolutely. Well,
There's
Nate, we're coming up on hours, and it is Valentine's Day, and I gotta go spend some time with Spinja. So I want to thank you so much for coming. Before we go, where can anybody find all of your information? I know you were talking about getting another Rumble channel up and going. I wasn't sure how that was going. And where can they reach out to you if they want to talk to you?
All right. Well, what I'm going to be doing is that I realized that YouTube is not a great place to be. If they take my channel down, I'm not going to be able to look at how-to videos. And I really can't I'm tired of censoring myself. So I'm going to be starting a new Rumble channel. I haven't done it yet. It will be called, unless somebody grabs it, it'll be called the Planetary Consciousness Project. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that on Rumble, and I'm going to be transitioning off of YouTube. I'm going to be revamping the old content I had as much as that I can actually work. It all depends on how much time I have. But I'm going to be putting out new content. I want to get back with the virtual temple complex thing that we were doing, where we have like a group chat and we work on things. I want to get back to doing that. And I'm probably going to be going solo, just have people popping in as a guest host, because every time I get either with someone, either something happens on my end and I can't fulfill my responsibility in the partnership, or something happens to them or it happens to both of us. So I'm just going to look at it like this. I'm just going to do my own thing and have everybody come and go, because that's really what it is anyway. Every time I get somebody like, hey, we're going to do this together, it doesn't last. So it may as well just be a come and go thing where I just commit myself and then other people come and go and hang out as long as they want. But I'm going to get back into this because, and it's probably the same for you. If you stop doing this, you just you start to fall apart. That's how I get. I don't handle this very well. I have to do this. It's not just therapy and talking to other people going through it. That is immense help too. But there's a reason I'm doing this. And if I don't do it, I don't have a reason to live. I mean, what else do I have to do? Pay more bills? Just be here and wait for something better to happen, or wait till the Armageddon shows up? I have to do this. So there isn't a stopping. It's just that it's been slow because of all the targeting. But, if I can get to that point where I can shield the rest of my body, which is my next goal, because I can't see myself making 70 or even 60 at this point with this kind of shit going on in my life, where, either you're going to take yourself out because it's impossible to work, it's impossible to support yourself, and you're sick and they're targeting you, or you're going to overcome it. So I've got two choices. I choose to overcome it. So this is part of it. I gaslight them online, and then they attack me, and then I go back to the drawing board and gaslight them again. And that's kind of the way this works.
Yeah. And if you don't have Nate on social media, the puns and the jokes are worth adding him, not to mention the amazing information the guy has. But the funny shit this man says cracks me up on a daily basis. So for that, I thank you for adding some levity to a pretty mundane world.
I'm trying my best. And I can say this, if you put me on stage, I'd bomb, right? I actually, all the comedy comes from the heart. It has to be situational. It just comes, and then I let it out. So, I'm not a professional comedian. That takes creating fiction. So this is like real stuff. So it's, and that's some of the best comedies like that. That's, George Carlin was like that. He would do like a stand-up act, but it was like they were spaced apart, where he could actually build on it from all the current events and everything he was feeling. And then he put it into an act, and it would just blow your mind. and then he would go away for a while and he'd do it again. So I could do that, but I couldn't continuously pump it out. So, but his was the same way. It's basically commentary on the craziness of our social situation. And I always got a kick out of, like, you know, it always frustrated me when I was arguing with people who have a different position, and it's usually based in the lack of knowledge. So I can show them all the facts to back up my argument, but they won't look at it. They're bought into what the media is telling them. That's the truth because it was on TV. You know, that just makes it official. It's like the 10 Commandments. There's 10, which makes it, if there was 12 or 9, it wouldn't be as impactful as 10. So you need to have an official sounding source, an official, you have to talk funny and act like a robot, and then they believe you because they're conditioned. But I got tired of arguing with these people from a factual point of view. So I just started to adopt the opposite. I'm like, well, I'll just be like them, but present their argument without the political correctness, without the facade. So it's like, yes, I do support all of this money being taken from the taxpayers and used to fund all sorts of terrible things. And I just posted something about the Clintons, man. I think they were they found out that the Clinton Foundation got either 58 or 68 million, something like that, from USAID, and Trump cut that money off. So I'm starting a collection for Chelsea and for Bill and for Hillary. So for anybody out there that is concerned about their well-being and where their next meal is going to come from, or where they can pay their rent, or, because we don't want our former president to be on food stamps, especially during a Trump presidency when Elon might cut that. So I'm taking up a collection for all those people who are concerned about America's oligarchy. So please send a blank check, and I will make sure that it gets to the right place. Because, the Clinton Foundation is like a black hole for money. You can just throw as much in as you want, and it's cool, socially acceptable.
That was beautiful. All right. I'm going to end this stream on that because I'm going to die laughing if I don't. So thank you so much, Nate, again. And thank you for everybody in the chat. And as I always end these on, if you can go outside, please go outside because it's a lot better than sitting in front of a screen. Thank you.
All right. Take care.